Okay, so what I'm going to demonstrate today is how to make a stargazer type of lily using the hawthorne hill cutters. You get two shapes of petal, a former, and then the block that does the different shapes of stamens. Okay, so here we go. Just move that out of the way. So I'm using some flour paste, just softening it up a bit, and I'm just going to take a small ball off there. I'm going to dust my board with a little bit of corn flour, and I'm just shaping the flour paste into a flat sausage shape. Dust a little bit more on top, and then with the vein rolling pin I'm just going to place it in the middle of the paste, press down really hard and roll backwards and forwards. I'm being really careful that I don't squash the vein that's coming up in the middle of the paste. Some people can press really hard and do this in one go, but I can't get enough pressure on it, so I go backwards and forwards a couple of times. But I'm just really careful that I don't squash the vein down the middle. Okay, so that gives you a nice vein in the middle. I'm then going to just tiny bit of corn flour on the board. I'm going to place the paste so that the vein is down on the board. Tiny bit more corn flour on top, and then I'm going to take one of my petals, and you need to cut 3 of each size, so 3 of the flat, 3 of the fatter one, and then 3 of the slightly thinner one. So we just place it so that the vein is going to run right through the middle of the petal. So I'm just lining it up so the vein is in the right place, and then press really hard and just give it a move around on the board. Take away the extra, and then I just run my finger around the edge just to make sure that it's a nice clean cut, and then with the edge of your finger or your thumb just press nice and hard so that all the veins that are marked inside the cutter can press into the flour paste like so. I'm then taking a piece of 28 gauge wire, and I'm just going to hook the end of the flower petal with the wire just to ease it out, and then I'm going to lift it out, and then I just take my wire, dip it in some water. Some people like to use egg white or edible glue, but I find that water is quite okay. And then I'm just going to run that into the vein in the back of the petal. If it pokes through the icing, just pull it back and adjust it, but you don't want to be able to see it on the front. Okay, you can't see it on the back, but you certainly don't want to see it on the front. And I take the wire about 2/3 of the way through, so it's just the end part that doesn't have any wire in it. It gives it plenty of support if you put the wire quite a long way in. Okay, so now I've got my petal. I'm going to take foam pad and ball tool, and I'm just going to go round the edge, and my ball tool is half on the petal and half on the foam pad, pressing quite heavily just to thin the edge so that it looks really natural. And depends on the type of lily you want. If you want it really frilly, then I just turn to the small end of the ball, and I'm going to go backwards and forwards. Again, I'm half on the edge of the paste and I'm half on the pad, and that will give a much finer ruffle. But not all lilies are really ruffly, so it just depends really what kind of thing you want to go for. Okay, so that gives you that effect. And then you get the former as well, and you just lay the wire through the narrow end, just gently bend it so that it's going to take that shape, and then just gently press down so that the petal is just resting in there to take the shape. And then whilst you cut the next one out, that's got enough time to just harden off enough to then be able to take that one off, put it to one side, and then you can put the next one on. And I always like to put them into an oasis block because that just keeps them from getting squashed or knocked over. Okay, so that's the petal. As I said, you need to do 3 of each size, and we then move on to the stamens. Now then, piece of paste. We're going to do the central piece first of all, and you've got 4 sizes on here. I like to use not the largest one but the next one down, and I've got a piece of flour paste about the size of a pea, and I'm just going to squidge that into a cone, holding it at the thin end, and I'm going to push the fat end into the mould, push it down, and then I'm going to lift it up, and where the extra bit has come out at the side, I'm just going to push that down the back so that I've just got the nice triangular shape that was made by the mould, and I'm just forming it, keeping that triangular shape. I'm then going to take 28 gauge wire, and I'm going to put a tiny little hook in the end, so really small little hook. Dip that in the water, and then I'm going to feed the wire down through the very centre until it disappears. If necessary, just pinch it just to close that up, and then I'm just going to roll the paste to thin it down the wire, and I want this to be about 1 inch long, so I'm going to pull a little bit of that off because it's a bit long, and I'm just going to taper that like so. Okay, so that gives you the centre part of the lily. That can go in the oasis block to dry. And then we have the different sizes of the little stamens, and really it depends how big you want to make them. I'm going to go for the number 3 one on here, so I'm going to roll a little piece of paste slightly bigger than a grain of rice, so something like that. I'm going to press it into the mould like so, and if you've got some bulging over the top, I just press down and run my finger across the top and then just flatten it down so that it's nice and flat and level with the mould. Again, a 28 gauge wire, and this time I'm just going to put a little tiny right angled bend in the end of it. I'm going to dip that in the water, and I'm just going to I'm just going to run that into the paste and just lift it out like so. Okay, and that gives you the little stamen on the end of your wire. Now, I like to leave things to dry overnight so that you know that they're really fixed properly to the wire. So once these have dried out, and I would do 5 or 6 of these per flower, I would again water. Some people like to use egg white or glue, up to you, but I find water works fine. And in here I've got some semolina, which has been coloured with yellow dust food colouring. I'm just going to dip in the water, just dab off the excess, and then just dip it into the semolina, which gives you the effect of the pollen. A bit difficult to see, but it makes it look nice. Some people like to use ground rice. That gives a slightly finer effect. Okay, but ideally I would do that once it's had 24 hours to dry.